Hello, everyone. The BMM Youth Team is ecstatic to bring you the second installment of the My American Journey series, where we interview American Marathi working professionals from a variety of different fields. On today's episode, we have Preeti Khanolkar, a lawyer turned video game developer working on the hit game Valorant, and you will definitely want to hear about her incredible American journey. My name is Amol Schroeder, and I'm a sophomore engineering student at Rutgers. And Preeti, thank you for taking the time to do this interview.
Thank you for having me.
So to start off, when you were in high school, do you know what you wanted to work in when you were older?
I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was in high school.
I can definitely relate to that. So to build on your point, what role, if any, did your parents play in your decision to pursue a particular career path or a major in college?
My parents didn't particularly push me in any direction. They were just very supportive with whatever I wanted to do. My mom kind of just told me, whatever you do, do it really well and make sure that when you have a career, you're able to to basically financially sustain yourself. Make sure that you don't need somebody else. You can earn enough money to take care of yourself on your own.
So when you were in high school, what extracurricular activities did you participate in? And how did this contribute to you selecting your major when it came to college?
So I didn't really do many extracurriculars in high school. I did volleyball for a couple seasons, but I didn't really do much else in high school. I played a lot of video games, and I'm not saying that that's what people should do, but that ended up probably being the most important extracurricular that influenced what I ended up doing later in life.
That's a really interesting point, and we will definitely talk about your current career in depth later. But first, let's talk a little bit about your college career. So, what did you major in college, and did you change your major at any point?
I never switched majors, but during my sophomore year, I decided to pursue psychology as my major. I had taken psychology, funny enough, in high school, but it I just didn't really like it then. But I majored in I took a intro to sociology course in my freshman year and an intro to psychology course, and I enjoyed both of them. So I decided to make psychology my major, and then I turned my minor in sociology into a major.
Are there any particular clubs or groups that you joined and participated in when you were in college?
I don't think I did any groups or any clubs or anything even close to that in college. I wrote a senior thesis during my final year, my undergraduate thesis, but no, I didn't. I focused on just studying and getting good grades in college. And I played
So,
games.
so if you had to pick one memory, what would you say your favorite college memory is?
My favorite college memory, I think, is actually when I decided to write my senior thesis. This was during a time when video games were kind of viewed as like contributing to violence or just like kind of a waste of time. But I saw this article in Time magazine about the Wii launching, and it said it was going to turn grandpas and girls into gamers. And I was shocked that Time magazine was talking about video games. This was like a really pivotal moment for me. I decided also to write a senior thesis. It was kind of the thing everyone was scared to do. It was like a year-long project. It was like 50 pages. I ended up actually writing 260 something pages. So I like absolutely did a crazy job with my thesis, but I decided that would be a huge challenge. And it was also a challenge to convince the people around me in the department and my peers that video games was something worth studying because the point of my thesis wasn't about violence or whatever. It was about how video games are meaningful to people and how they shape our lives. So I had an advisor who was really, really supportive, and he and I worked together, and I wrote this incredible paper, this incredible study, and went on to win a lot of awards, get a lot of funding for it. And then ultimately I published it in an academic journal, like an actual real like scientific journal, which was really, really cool. And I think that's the best thing I did in college.
That's really amazing. I know you expressed interest in wanting to be a lawyer all throughout college, and you actually ended up going to Cornell Law School. So how was your experience applying to law schools and taking the LSATs?
It was really hard. So while I was actually writing this thesis, I was also like studying for the LSAT, taking the LSAT, applying to schools, and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do at that point, but I knew that law would help me get there. At least that's what I hoped. I figured at the worst case, like worst case scenario, I have a law degree and I do something else with it. It was tough. it was a lot. I don't think I did much else at that point. Actually, I joke that I played a lot of video games in college. I do remember at this point, I did not play a lot of video games. I was very, very focused on like applying to law school and writing my paper. Um, so yeah, it was, it took a lot of effort.
So on that note, how was your law school experience at Cornell?
It was also very hard. So I thought college overall was pretty easy. Obviously, like writing the senior thesis and applying to schools was difficult. But school was pretty easy. As long as I studied, I'd get an A. My majors, like I picked them because I was good at them. But law school was a lot of work. And it's basically, it was all the smart people that had gone to college now all in one place at Cornell. And law school is just really brutal and it's a lot of work. And Ithaca is really cold and I had a lot of fun with my friends and whatnot there, but I think it was 3 really hard years. And law wasn't something I was personally passionate about in the same way I was passionate about psychology and sociology. So the subject matter also wasn't like the most exciting to me. So it was difficult. I did it and I did it really well, but I didn't have fun. I think it taught me perseverance though. Something that I think like I wasn't excited about and just I don't know, it was a lot of work that I was able to like sit down, focus, do it, and like excel at it, I think is really like a testament to like my drive.
So after you graduate from Cornell Law School, tell us a little bit about how your career path progressed following grad school.
So immediately after I graduated, I had a choice between going to a large law firm or taking a job at the federal government. And I didn't really enjoy the law firm experience. It was a lot of hours and I didn't think the work was particularly interesting. So I was interested in trying to see what the government was like. So I took a job working for a government organization in DC and I pretty much got there and realized I was bored. And which is ironic because I kind of went into law school knowing I probably didn't want to be a lawyer long term. I just didn't realize almost immediately I was going to be unhappy being a lawyer. And it's not that the work was hard. The work was actually pretty easy. And it's not that the hours were long. The hours are actually really great. It was only 8 hours a day. But I just didn't feel passionate about my work. And I thought a lot about how my dad, like, he runs his own business and he loves working. And on Mondays, he's really, really excited to go to work. And I kind of dreaded Mondays and I dreaded being at work. And I found myself kind of living for all the time outside of work. And I didn't think I could do this for another 40 years. So I started thinking really seriously about what else I wanted to do, especially because when I would come home from work, I was actually working on publishing that paper I mentioned, the one I worked on in undergrad. It was in the final stages of edits to be submitted and published in the academic journal. And I thought to myself, I could be good at anything. Like the fact that I could go to law school, like an Ivy League law school, and succeed there, even though that really wasn't my passion. What if I put all of that effort and passion into something I'm actually interested in? And so I decided to start looking into video games. I was writing that paper. Maybe I could have a career in video games. So I started networking from there. And I reached out to a lot of people on LinkedIn, did informational interviews, and eventually found a conference that I could attend for industry professionals who worked in games. And that's where I went. I met a bunch of people who work in games, and I actually met people from Riot, which is ultimately where I ended up going and where I am now.
How was the transition between working as a lawyer to working in the marketing department at Riot Games?
So it was a little weird. So when Riot they took a chance on me and they decided to hire me, it was because I wrote laws. So I worked for like a court. It was like an appeals court. Um, and I would work with the judges to decide the cases, and then I would write the law that would eventually be published. So Riot was kind of like, you could write marketing stuff too, right? I was like, oh, absolutely, why not? So it was, it wasn't that hard to make the transition. I do remember struggling a bit because I had a very, very like professional environment that I had like been groomed in, and Riot was much more relaxed. So I remember struggling a little bit there with being like, how do I talk more naturally? Like probably the way I talk now is more indicative of that. But yeah, like not use as many formal words, be a little bit more direct in how I'm speaking. But it wasn't too bad, actually. It was really exciting. I was so excited to go to work. I remember my first day was a Friday, and I was like, why is my first day a Friday? I just want to go back to work tomorrow. So, and oh, my first day was our world finals for season 3. So I was in a stadium, like Staples Center, watching like two teams like fight for the championship. Like, what a first day of work. So yeah, it was, I don't know, it was easy. It was very easy to ultimately like switch careers into something I was excited about.
Not a lot of people can say that they had their first day of work at Staples Center, so that's awesome. I know you started in the marketing department. So how was your experience switching into a different department within the same company?
I was really lucky. Like marketing is something I think like I just kind of naturally was interested in, but I had a mentor and he looked at the work I was doing and he asked me to kind of describe it to him. I like put it on a whiteboard. I was like writing out everything and drawing out the different things I did. And he said, I don't think you actually should stay in the role you're in. I think your passion is actually in game production. I was like, I don't know what being a producer is. What's that? And he described it to me. And ultimately what it came down to was I was really passionate about making things that players would love. I really cared about like the end user experience, the end player experience. Like, why do we make things the way we make them? And what is the way that we bring players value? That's where my passion lay. And so he helped me figure out that game production was the way that I could actually tackle solving those problems. And he mentored me along the way, introduced me to people at Riot, and ultimately I ended up on the development team that became what is now Valorant.
A lot of people, myself included, dream about working on video games. So if you have to pick one thing, what's your favorite part about being a producer at Valorant?
So it's really hard because my job is really fun. But I think the one thing that I love most is that in my own way, like I get to contribute to better things in the world. In this case, it's happiness. So to kind of use a more personal story, like the last year and a half-ish, 2 years now at this point with COVID, it's been really, really hard. And I have a lot of players who reach out to me and tell me how much our game, how much Valorant has meant to them. We released Valorant during COVID. It was in June of 2020, and so many people were suffering during that time. And I don't just mean like getting sick, but also just being stuck at home, being isolated from their friends, uncertainty. And this game gave them a distraction, let them connect with their friends. And it's so nice to hear from people that in many ways, like the game has helped them. And some people use words like this game saved me, and that is incredible. So and even beyond that, I love that I can help make something, figure out what people love and make that for people, help them like have happiness. The same way I have so many happy memories playing games as a kid, I can bring that to other people.
I also know that you work as a hiring manager at Riot Games. So tell us about what kinds of qualities you look for when hiring interns who want to work in game development.
So I'm really lucky that I'm able to hire incredibly senior people, but also like people who are just starting out. And I actually really love interviewing interns, to be honest. So on my team, we hire a bunch of different types of interns, artists, engineers, and then me directly. I end up being the manager for the production interns. And it's funny, I know earlier I said I didn't do anything in high school and college really when it came to extracurriculars. The irony is that when I'm interviewing candidates, I am actually looking at what their extracurriculars are. So first, I'm very impressed when someone has a really good GPA. So I want to make sure that like when I look at your like a resume and I see that someone has a really good GPA, and it doesn't matter what their major is, it shows me that they have like the dedication, the focus, the perseverance to study and do a good job. And like because at work, as much as my job is fun, there's a lot of stuff I have to do that isn't as fun. I still do it and I still do it really well and I do it on time. And I want to make sure anyone I hire has that same level of care in everything they do, that same drive for excellence. So aside from that, I also want to see their extracurriculars because as you kind of asked earlier, like it's hard to have the exact skills to be hired for this type of job. So the way I'm able to evaluate if a person would be good at this is other stuff that they do. So running clubs or maybe other internships that they've had, basically a passion for the type of work that I can see translating well to being a producer. It's different if you're an artist or an engineer, then I'm also like, okay, well, what courses are you taking? Let's look at your portfolio and stuff. But aside from that, it's really about like how that person chooses to spend their time and like how they excel and what drive they have to learn. I very much care about somebody having a passion and curiosity for learning and being better at what they do because I know that's the kind of person I can like take on and mentor and grow. And then aside from that, another thing that's really important to me is like specifically because this is the gaming industry, is somebody who loves games. And if somebody loves Valorant, even better because it shows me that they're going to be passionate and thinking about what is going to be the best thing that we can make for players.
So when you say you look for particular things in someone's resume that would make a good producer, what specific things are you looking for?
I'm looking for somebody who is kind of like a natural leader, somebody who will step in and see that, and this is how a lot of people end up being like producers. They see chaos and they think, wait, why isn't someone organizing this? Like, why don't we have meeting notes? Why don't we have schedules? Why don't we have action items? Are we making the right thing? Are we making the right decisions? Are we looking at data? Are we being considerate of all the different priorities that we have? And that's kind of how a lot of people end up being like the producer on their team at in a lot of like different schools or on the project that they're running. So, for example, like somebody interviewed recently was the manager of like their professional Valorant team, like their college team that was competing in different tournaments. And her passion was kind of helping the team so that they could focus on like scrimming and stuff. She would help them like make sure they were getting the right peripherals, setting up those scrims, making sure they're reviewing VODs, like anything that would help them focus entirely on like getting better at the game. She would take care of everything else. And that's kind of naturally what a manager, a team lead, or a producer would do. So like hearing about that experience, I'm like, oh, I know exactly the type of mindset that you have. You're a leader.
As a current hiring manager at Riot, do you have any advice for current students seeking internships?
Yeah. So when I was in school, internships weren't as big a deal as they are now. And I actually think now it's very important to get an internship. I'd say that's more important than extracurriculars. And depending on the type of internship, could even be more important than your grades. My advice would be when you're applying for an internship, obviously do the generic thing where you like make sure your resume and your cover letter are tailored to this to the specific internship you're applying to. But I would also add, make sure that the types of internship you're applying to you show that you have that type of experience. So if I'm applying, let's say, to an internship at a game company, make sure that I've worked in something related to games, right? Whether it's like making a game with my friends at school in a club, or I don't know, like doing something that's like production related if you're applying for a production internship, whatever it is, make sure your internship that you're applying for, you actually are like having relevant experience around that, and highlight that experience in your resume and cover letter. The other thing I'd advise is like, let's say you make it through the process and you're like, you get really, really far, but you don't quite get it. I think it's always really useful, like, especially more so if you've actually had an interview face to face with somebody, to ask the recruiter if the person who interviewed you could give you some feedback. It's something that almost never gets asked. And when we get asked if we can give feedback, we're always really willing to sit down. I've had like a 30-minute conversation with someone that like we almost offered, but some other candidate beat the person out, and spent 30 minutes giving them advice on like what they could improve for next time. And it showed to me that this person was really invested in learning and getting feedback, and made me more excited to hire them in the future. And I asked them to connect with me on LinkedIn and apply once they've graduated, because they were an excellent candidate. We just ended up offering somebody else. So it just shows a lot of, I think, maturity to do something like that. And separately from that, I also just, on the topic of mentorship, recommend that people always seek out mentors. No one is ever going to come to you and say, hey, can I mentor you? It's just not a thing. It's happened to me once in my entire life. The way that you get a mentor is that you seek them out and you ask them to mentor you, and you demonstrate that you're worth being mentored, that you're worth their time. I get asked by a lot of people to mentor me, and I just usually don't have time. So I have to say no. And when I say yes, it's because I see that my time will be spent really well with this person, and they demonstrate a lot of passion and commitment. And as an example, I had somebody ask me a couple of years ago, and the way we conducted our mentorship sessions was every 2 weeks, 30 minutes, I would just get on a call and say, what questions do you have for me? And it was up to her to ask me questions, and then to kind of take advice I'd given, follow up with me, and show how she'd kind of use that or what the results were. And she still follows up with me now and will tell me how her journey is going. So I guess the best way to say that is like, you are the one who controls your career, nobody else. So like, put yourself out there and seek knowledge, seek to get better, understand that like, especially when you're starting out, you don't know anything. So you have to be open to feedback. You have to be open to learning, and like make people want to invest in you by showing that you're learning and growing and that you respect their time.
To end off, Preeti, you've had an incredible career path. You had a very inspirational story. If you could go back in time and tell your younger self one piece of advice, what would you tell them?
So I would tell the younger version of me that there are a lot of things that you're going to experience that are going to feel like failures or setbacks. There's a lot of moments where I thought that I did something or failed at something and it was terrible and it was catastrophic. There's one specific example that comes to mind, which is like in my first year of law school, I was in the final stages of an interview for an internship at like this very prestigious law firm, and they were going to hire two people. I made it to the final four, and they told me I came in third place. And I thought about the opportunity, the money, the scholarship, everything that I was losing. And I was so devastated. And I felt so bad about it. And my parents put no pressure on me. My mom was just proud at how far I'd made it. But to me, it felt like so bad. And what I would really what I tell people now, it's like I never would have known if someone told me in that moment that 10 plus years later, I wouldn't even be a lawyer anymore. And none of that actually matters. And it's not about that setback or that moment. It's like, one, the fact that I made it that far just shows how incredible I am. I would say, look how far you made it. Do you realize how hard it was to even come in third place? Like how many people before you didn't even get there and how much work you put in and how much you learned to get to that spot? And now what matters is that this is a pivotal moment and there are two directions I can take. And what's important is what I do next. So yeah, it's just you don't know where life is going to take you. So don't be so hard on yourself when something goes wrong. If you have truly put in the best effort you can, recognize that. And if you didn't, if it was because you didn't study or you did something wrong or whatever, then acknowledge that and think about how you're going to change it. But don't be so hard on yourself when things go wrong, because you have no idea, like literally no idea how your life is going to turn out. And like kind of on that note, the other thing I would tell myself is like be more appreciative of my parents. So my parents came to this country, made a lot of sacrifices so that I could have a better life. And they're the reason that I could even do all the things that I did, why I could take so many risks in my life. When I got the job at Riot, and it was a considerable step back in my career, I was completely restarting into an entry-level job. It was a risk to see if I could make something more of it. And I had no idea if it was going to work. And my mom said to me, it's okay, go for it. Do it, because even if everything falls apart and you fail, you can always come back home. And we didn't have that opportunity when we were young because we were in America trying it out on our own. So on that note, take it seriously that your parents have made so many sacrifices for you and you have a leg up because of that. So I study in school, take school seriously. I know I say that I spent a lot of high school just playing video games and maybe didn't take high school seriously enough. And I mean, I guess if I could go back, I would change that. I don't know how that would change other things in my life. Maybe I'd be a doctor or something right now, which I don't think I want to be a doctor. So that's okay. But don't waste opportunity, because that's what's terrible. Like you've been given every opportunity and your parents have done so much to get you to where you are now. And that doesn't mean you have to listen to every little thing your parents say, but it's your life. And ultimately, if you want to succeed, it's on you. So just, I don't know, don't be, ironically, don't be too hard on yourself, but also don't go too easy on yourself, because life is going to be what you make it. And you can succeed in anything you do. If I can swap careers and go into games, like I'm confident that any of you, if you really put your mind to it, you can do anything that you want. I truly believe that.
Thank you for that advice.
Of course.
So Preeti, on behalf of the BMM youth team, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to do this interview. One last question, because I'm sure all the viewers are wondering it. Do you play the game you work on, Valorant? And if so, what is your favorite map, skin, and agent?
Awesome. So yes, I play lots and lots of Valorant. My favorite, you said map first. My favorite map is Bind. I love the teleporters. It's also one of the early maps we developed, so I have a lot of reps on it. So I'm a little better at Bind than some of the other maps. My favorite agent is Omen. I love edgy characters. I love his voice. I've been in love with Omen since the very beginning when we started development on him. And let's see, favorite skin. That's hard because I run the skins team. I'm the team lead for that. So every single skin and cosmetic, battle pass, etc., gets made by my team. So you're putting me in a weird spot making me pick. But I would have to pick Ruination because it's really edgy and dark. I love using it when I'm playing Omen. And also, it's crossover with League of Legends, which I also really love. So it's just kind of a win-win. The Phantom specifically, I love it. I love the sounds. I love the feel. I love the experience. It's really sick.
Preeti Khanolkar, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.